Last time on The World Rose, Ella managed to take off the Assyrian Empire and was somehow shocked when they decided to attack. Fortunately, the Praetorian Empire then turned up and helped battle them off. Caesar proposed marriage to Ella, but she refused him. He stormed off home in a sulk. The story continues. Chapter 16. Ella wants to go hunting and invites Quintus and Elgar with her. They turn up thinking they're going to hunt foxes, which is bad, don't hunt foxes. But she's like, no, silly, what gave you that idea? I want to go and hunt purple flowers. So, you know, I would be more annoyed, but I was just glad they weren't hunting foxes because that would make me sad, so, okay, fine. And because they're hunting flowers, Quintus and Elgar are all like, well, we've got all our weapons, and Ella's like, oh, it's fine, you won't need them, we're just hunting flowers. So they're like, I guess we'll leave them behind, there's nothing dangerous in the forest. Then a bear attacks, and they've got nothing to defend themselves with. The bear, like, attacks Quintus, and I thought he was going to die, but then he didn't. But while they're escaping the bear, Duncan, the dog, goes missing. Oh no, I'm so sad that this dog that I clearly loved so deeply has gone missing during a bear attack. I do hope nothing bad happened to him. Anyway, Ella is miserable for some reason about this, and Gully sort of tries to cheer her up by putting on the rest of the Lily of the Valley play. If you remember, the Lily of the Valley play was just the Princess of the Lily of the Valley princess. Oh, so confusing, man. Goes to sleep and is meant to be woken up by her suitor, and people keep trying to wake her up and fail. A character called the Ivy Emperor, I wonder who that could represent, turns up and sort of tricks her awake with a poisoned kiss. And she rejects him because he's poisonous, I guess. And in anger, the Ivy Emperor vows revenge and attacks. Just then, the play is interrupted again by news that the Praetorian army are attacking. Who could have foreseen this coming? Gully then tells Ella that the play ends with the Poplar Prince, who had been at the beginning, who the Lily of the Valley had rejected in the first place for some reason. He turns up as Lily is facing the army, saves her, and they run away to the wilderness together. So Ella goes off to do the boring military stuff. I know there's more really dull military talk, which I didn't really bother writing down because I didn't care about it. The only thing I remember, because the maths didn't make sense to me, was the numbers of the Varescan army. So if you remember, the Varescan army were at 700 foot soldiers and 200 cavalry. Then those numbers were like halved in the Assyrian invasion, and really difficult to replenish because they're all trained from birth, yada yada. Except they're now back up to 600 foot soldiers and 150 cavalry. So they somehow managed to sort of jump up nearly back to where they were before, despite... I don't know how much time has passed. There's a really, really bad sense of time passing in this. And it feels like about a week. I don't think it has been a week, but it feels like about a week. So I don't know how they've managed to boost the numbers again so dramatically. But whatever, okay, fine. The normal army, the Celtian army, will be mercenary recruits too. So basically, they don't stand a chance, they are screwed. Chapter 17. Ella walks through the ruins of the World Fair, which apparently hasn't been cleared up yet, despite at least a month having passed, because the Assyrians gave her a month to give back the treasure and stuff. She finds a poem on the ground. Very mysterious. Oh no, it blows into her hand from the wind. She caught it and saw a poem written in gold ink. In the darkness of the depths below, where no light had ever been, a candle lit and seemed to glow, as bright as day, although unseen. There does that tender secret dwell, forever since the day you came. To you alone my heart does swell, for you invoked the hidden flame. Battle commences, but the Celtian army ends up surrendering. I can't remember how long the fight was, because again I kind of gloss over this bit, it's really boring. So Ella goes out to meet Caesar, who's all like, "You are the lily of my valley. Do you accept your fate?" That wasn't the voice I had from earlier, but I don't care. Anyway, that's a bit creepy. Then suddenly, boulders rain down on the battlefield, and King Bosgold of Bora joins the fray and decimates the Praetorians. Caesar is struck by a rock, and for some reason Ella then helps him to cover, even though like he's the invading force, but whatever. He dies. Cool. And then she cries. I don't know why she cries. He is the enemy, but she's just so kind of heart, I suppose. Ella thinks she sees Duncan. She's like a fawn-coloured blur and follows it. And she finds herself in a field of wheat, you know, because it's gold. Like in the Sting song, as we know, Richard Burton was raised by Sting in Africa. And there are bits of cloth floating around. Apparently the cloth she recognises coming from the airship that Ronwind, Drake and Astronamus had flown off in. So she posits that he probably crashed in this field and died. So he never made it to the clouds. But also, I don't think it was that far away from the World Fair field. Again, I don't know where everything is. I don't know how much distance there is. So it feels like they should have been found, because again, at least a month has passed. But okay. Bosgold then turns up in the field with this fancy chest, and he's like, "The prophecy is about me." You know, I was really bad. I can't do a Scottish accent. "The prophecy is about me. Open the chest with your key." I don't know how he knows about the prophecy, but whatever, he knows for good reasons. She tries the key, but it doesn't fit. Oh, who could have known? He's unhappy. Then suddenly, wolves. It's Wolfman from the opening. He turns up with his army of hundreds of wolves, and they begin to like tear the Boran army to shreds. Duncan turns up again, and he and two other wolves pull King Bosgold off his horse, where he joins the carnage and is torn up. So while all these people are just being horribly killed, the Wolfman tells Ella that he is the one the prophecy is about. No, not the prophecy. He says he's the one for her, because he doesn't know about the prophecy. He says that he fell in love with her when they met in the woods all that time ago. He said that my one true love would carry a lock matching my key, and that it would guard a chest carrying tremendous treasures. He would bring an everlasting dynasty and come to conquer my realm. Then he was not wrong, the vagabond said, and pulled an object from his breast pocket. It was a red rose, around which was wrapped a lock of golden hair. I do indeed carry a lock, and it is your lock, which my wolf tore that fateful night. Ever since it has guarded my chest, within you will find the treasure of my heart. Our love is an everlasting dynasty, he declared, and answer me this, have I not conquered your realm already? Ella fainted in the field of cloth and gold, for she knew now that he was the one. The vagabond picked her up and carried her home. Ella faints in the field of gold and cloth. Wolfman, who has still not been named at this point, picks her up and presumably takes her home. And then the bard turns up. Apparently he was watching from a hill the whole time. And he sings a final song that brings the themes of the book together. Or he sings about like the Wild Rose and how it means three things. Even though I only counted two things, but whatever. As the sun set, a bard watched from a distant hill and strummed on his lute. In a golden field lay a locked chest, as our fairy tale comes to a close. A melodramatic love quest in which empire came to blows. Many declared they were the best, but only one the Queen Lily chose, for he had risen above the rest to win the heart of the world rose. Thus, on the day that the world rose, there was one who had won the world rose. There was a lot that irritated me about this book. I don't know if you could tell. So I said the prose is juvenile, boring and clumsy. I did say in the first part that the grammar could have been worse. I do stand by that for the most part, except the blurb I realise is really bad grammar-wise, it doesn't make any sense. And I did spot at least one typo. Not a typo as in like, oh, they slipped a key. Typo as in like they didn't know how to spell the word balderdash. Because he spelt it it is spelt B-A-L-D-E-R dash, but he spelt it boulder as in like a giant rock. And balderdash spelled like that apparently is a video game and also a British electro-pop group or something. I don't know. So that made me laugh. But yeah, no. Prose boring, bad, not good. The world building is atrocious. The dialogue is hilariously inconsistent, flipping between generic fantasy, Shakespearean oldie worldy, and weirdly modern. I wrote down 3 examples of dialogue all from the same scene. I did not expect to reach him tonight. We will camp out. Thou play the flute, thou must be a bardess. Thanks, but I don't believe that. Alright, yeah. They're all from the same scene and none of them matched, so I don't know what was going on with the dialogue. The romance is dumb. She met the guy once. Never thought about him again. He fell in love with her immediately, even though she was like quite mean to him. And I don't understand how it was romance. It's also kind of creepy when you take into consideration that Wolfman presumably is behind the letter and the poem Elephines. And it just reminds me a little bit of Richard Britton, you know, stalking and sending letters to those 2 ladies who didn't really know him and presumably never thought about him, and yet he decided that he's the love of their lives. So there we go. That was a bit odd. The humour is nonsensical. I appreciate that he tried so hard to put in humour, but he put in the wrong types of humour. He was putting in like slapstick, which only really works with sort of films where you can see it. He tried absurdist humour, and which again doesn't really work in this particular book. This book would need witty humour, which to me implies a sense of intelligence and sophistication, which neither of which were here. Funny dialogue, which he nearly did, because some of Gullivander's lines slightly funny, or satire. And I thought this was going to be satire, and then it wasn't. So that was where he should have been concentrating the humour, and he didn't, so that failed. There was a distinct lack of logic. Why did Ella go on this 4-day trip through the woods without an escort and not knowing the way? Why did she leave her dog in charge of a kingdom? Why was Ronwin's galleon manned only by 4 men? Why did he think there was a kingdom in the clouds? Why does anyone think any of this stuff in this book when, as far as I can tell, they're not meant to be stupid? So it kind of implied like a sort of whimsical setting that actually was not supported by anything that happened. The fight scenes were really boring and the military tactics seemed dubious to me, but I'm not a military person, so I could be wrong, but they didn't seem right. Why were all these mysteries introduced if they never went anywhere? There was the Enchanted Island, the Bandit Citadel, the Order of the Sacred Rose, and they were all chucked in and then just forgotten about. And it's annoying because those are the only bits I actually kind of cared about. Those are things I wanted to know more about, and they were just thrown out. Why does Elgar wear tweed? It's an ancient setting, he says. Tweed wasn't invented to like the 18th century? It's like a Scottish Highland thing. I think it's 18th century. So that was odd. The characters are just really either nothing or stupid. Apart from Quintus. I liked Quintus. And Gully is, I suppose, distinct as a character, but slightly irritating. And everyone else is either forgettable or caricature. Ella, as the main character, is terrible, both as a character and as a person. She's so inconsistent. We're told she's very wise, but then we're shown her making stupid decisions. We're told she's compassionate and kind, but then shown her acting apathetic and even cruel. We're told she's a great queen, but shown her kingdom being invaded twice over the span of maybe a couple of months, when previously the kingdom had been at peace for 3 decades. And I have no idea if this was intentional or not. The Lily of the Valley play calls the main character, who's sort of, I guess, meant to be Ella, mean. But then everyone treats her as if she's really lovely and amazing. You care, your majesty, as a compassionate individual who has a deep affinity with the populace, says Quintus. I am too lovely for my own good, Ella agrees, and then later callously chews him out and steals his ideas. Your wisdom never fails to astound, Gully says to the woman who left a dog in charge of the kingdom. We ought to stop placing our faith in the myth of the Varescan invincibility, says Ella, despite being the only person to do this, whilst everyone else has told her not to rely on them. It's just so frustrating, and I hate her, and whilst I was reading, I kept expecting the twist to be that she was actually the villain the entire time. I would have accepted that and been like, yes, that makes sense. This was foreshadowed well, that she's actually evil and terrible and that they want to overthrow her. But no, I think she was meant to be a good character, but she wasn't. I also question whether this book was meant to be, like, sexist or empowering, because, I mean, the main character, yeah, she's a queen, and no one questions her authority for being a woman. I was like, okay, cool. And she's described as wise and compassionate and a good queen, and that's great. And the Varescans are all female and warriors, and they're super cool and amazing. That's all good. But then Ella is an idiot, and I haven't ruled it out as being unintentional. The Varescan loyalty is brought into question, and because I don't know that Ella's meant to be a bad character, I wonder if we're meant to agree with her that the Varescans are being terrible. Then there's the creepy girl fight in the tournament, which, it's funny because women can't use swords, and that crowd are ogling at them because they're pretty ladies. At Elgar's estate, the women chatted about their dresses, shoes and hair, whilst Elgar plays the dogs, because, you know, that's what women do. We just sit and talk about hair and dresses and not play with dogs. It just seemed like a really odd detail to mention. And then there's some unnecessary descriptions of ladies wearing tight dresses, having ample bosom, and also Ella wearing an evergreen dress over her curved body, which just kind of creeped me out a little bit. You didn't need to put that in. And I don't know, I wasn't sure what his opinion on women was, because he seemed to both be showing them as, just kind of pretty to look at and maybe sexy, but I'm not going to put that in because it's a fairy tale, and fairy tales never have anything like that in them. But also wanted to be empowering, and it just ended up as a mess. So how would I fix this? I mean, honestly, it's dead on arrival. I don't know you can fix it, but let's just say Mr. Britton broke into my house and said, I demand you to help me workshop this and make this story amazing. And here's the changes I would suggest, I suppose. Firstly, Ella's character needs to be more consistent. Is she kind or is she apathetic? You can't have it both ways. She either needs to be a nice person who does nice things, or you lean more into her being rude and uncaring. I guess I'd go with the former, because it's an easier character type to kind of have in a romance, unless the romance is about her getting better as a person. That's also perfectly fine, but as a fairy tale fantasy romance, have her a nice person, and then we're going to be more interested in her love life because we want her to... That's a bit loud. We want her to then find someone nice, you know. Next, is she a good queen or a bad queen? We're told she's great, but then we're shown her doing stupid things. Like an idiot who does not listen to advice. I would probably be inclined to have her being inexperienced and naive. Not because I don't think women can rule, because that's silly. But just because we're told that she's rebellious, used to go out on walks and didn't really have proper lessons. So I would probably twist that and say she was so rebellious she used to skip out her lessons to go walking in the forest. But then you could give her some really cool skills to make up for it, like she's really good at climbing or hunting or foraging or something. And you could say she's really diplomatic and she's very good at getting out of trouble, which is why she never got in trouble for skipping lessons. That would be one way of spinning it. And it also makes sense that it was just all these stupid decisions and she's quite young and, you know, makes sense. The finale was silly, so I'd fix that. Take out the Assyrians because they made me uncomfortable. And I'd have the Praetorians as the main enemy because having two invasions was a bit repetitive and boring. Let's say that she invites Caesar to Celtia for a week to try and form a good relationship. He starts out nice, but as the trip goes on, cracks appear in his facade and she begins to realise that he's maybe not that great a person. He proposes, she doesn't say yes. He gets angry and leaves the sort of, "you'll be mine one way or another" vibe. So, leaving the reader to predict, he's going to attack. And it's fine if it's obvious, because sometimes you do need to just say events are going to happen, because then the reader goes, "oh, that thing's going to happen, I've got something to look forward to." There's a fun writing tip. Ella, not being a complete idiot, can then send Dungeonac to increase the army and goes out herself to establish alliances with the other kingdoms of the continent. As for everything in the middle, right, there are elements that I wanted to go somewhere because they had potential. The island Ronwind finds that turns out to be a rock with a seal. You know, maybe there was an island there, but it's only visible in the moonlight, or there's an illusion spell in it. Maybe Ronwind was drunk and only drunk people can see it, I don't know. Second, there was the brief mention of the mythical island, or the bandit citadel, which was never brought out again. That was pretty interesting. And thirdly, the Order of the Sacred Rose. What was that about? That definitely should have been brought up again. And I don't know if Britain had ideas for these already. But they did need to feature, at least the Sacred Rose needed to feature, because the whole thing was about a rose and she was always asking about the keys. So if I had to rewrite this, here's probably what I would do. Let's say the order was built around a prophecy of a rose of the world coming and choking the world in its thorns or something. Like, there's a rose and they're scared of it. And the order was made to stop this happening, but they didn't know when. Perhaps a small group of Praetorians infiltrate the castle and Ella goes into hiding, which prompts her to find the Order's secret HQ, which she then unlocks with her rose key, because the rose key was pointless, and asks for help. They realise that Caesar is the rose of the world, as he keeps referring to himself, and the knights join the battle, which is then extra force that the Celtians need to win, and perhaps one of Ella's ancestors was actually the one who founded the Order, which is why the key was buried in her castle. That would bring the Order into the plot. It would give them a purpose and a reason, and it would also make it more understandable that maybe the Celtians could actually defeat the crazy Praetorian big empire thing. Then the biggest thing really was the romance, because it's meant to be a romance, and the romance was terrible. I mean, if you want the romantic part to be the Wolfman, that's fine, but you need to establish some sort of relationship between them, because it's just really, really awkward otherwise, just to have characters who meet once and then suddenly they're in love at the end, even though they've never spoken to each other in between. And honestly, I don't know how to fix it. I don't really like prophecies about romance, because I find it takes away from the agency of the characters, and it is the same reason I don't find the soulmate stories that compelling, actually a little bit troubling. And there are slow of them on like fanfiction websites, there's tons. So maybe the prophecy sounds like it's about romance, but it's actually about the invasion, and then she's free to fall in love on her own terms. Or maybe she doesn't even fall in love. Maybe she's still single at the end, and maybe that's okay. Maybe the story's actually about an inexperienced queen who grows from a young girl obsessed with true love, and at the end becomes a capable leader who saves her kingdom. I mean, romance is such a sort of trope of like fairy tale and fantasy already that it might be fun to subvert it and actually have the character who wants romance to then realise that's not the most important thing. I think that's all I can think of how to fix it, apart from obvious, like, make the prose better and less terrible and stuff. And obviously humour, make that just witty humour. Or take the humour out, it doesn't need to be a comedy. It doesn't need to be funny. It can just be a serious book with some lightly humorous narration if you really want to go that route. So yeah, I don't think I have much more to say about this really. Thank you for listening to my insane ramblings. Hopefully, whilst you're watching this, I am still alive and I haven't been murdered by a madman. If he does come after me though, you know, it's going to be a bring your own bottle affair because I don't have any. Please drop a a like or a subscribe, and let me know in the comments what your thoughts are. Ciao. Don't know why I did that. Ciao.